Daniel was a young man who lived in a quiet town on the edge of a massive city. His life was simple. Almost too simple. Every morning he woke up, drank the same coffee, walked the same streets, and went to the same repair shop where he spent his days fixing broken things. Machines, bicycles, old vehicles that people had given up on. Daniel had a talent for repairing things others considered useless. He could look at a damaged engine and somehow understand what was wrong. A broken machine always made sense to him. People were harder. At night, when the town became silent, Daniel liked to walk alone beneath the stars. The cool wind brushed against his face as he wandered through empty roads. Walking gave him time to think, to wonder. Because deep inside, Daniel always felt that something was missing. His life was comfortable, safe, predictable. But he couldn't stop thinking. There had to be something more. Something beyond repairing old machines and repeating the same day forever. He wanted adventure. He wanted to see something impossible. Something that would prove the universe was bigger than the small world he knew. But he never expected adventure to find him, especially not that night. After a long day at the repair shop, Daniel locked the doors later than usual. The streets were quiet. The town slept. The sky above was unusually clear, with thousands of stars shining brightly. He took his usual path home. The moonlight painted the road silver. Everything felt peaceful. Until he looked up. At first, Daniel noticed a strange light moving across the sky. It was brighter than any star, brighter than any plane. His first thought was simple. A meteor. He had seen them before. A quick flash. A streak of light. Then nothing. But this was different. The light didn't disappear. It grew brighter. Larger. Closer. Daniel slowed his steps. His curiosity replaced his tiredness. What is that? The object moved faster. It wasn't falling like a meteor. It was changing direction. Controlling its movement. Daniel's heart began to race. Because whatever it was coming toward him. The strange object descended lower and lower, until the entire road was covered in a bright white glow. Daniel stood frozen, unable to move, unable to speak. The air around him vibrated. Then, the object crashed into the nearby field. A powerful flash exploded across the darkness. The ground shook beneath his feet. Windows rattled. The sound echoed through the empty streets like thunder. For several seconds, Daniel just stood there, watching the smoke rise into the night sky. Every instinct told him to run, to go home, to pretend he had never seen it. But another voice inside him, the same voice that had always looked at the stars and wondered, told him to go closer. Slowly, Daniel walked toward the field. Each step brought him closer to the impossible. The grass was burned in a perfect circle. The air smelled like electricity. In the center of the impact zone sat a strange metallic object. Not a plane, not a spacecraft he had ever seen. It looked like something built by a civilization that shouldn't exist. Daniel approached carefully. Then the surface of the object shifted. A door opened. A strange blue light filled the field. And from inside, something moved. Daniel stopped breathing. Because for the first time in human history, he realized he was not alone. Fear and curiosity fought inside him. He could have turned around and gone home, pretending nothing had happened. But something inside him urged him forward. Gathering his courage, he ran toward the field. When he reached the crash site, he was shocked by what he saw. A strange, sleek craft lay half buried in the ground, glowing faintly as if it were alive. Its surface was smooth, shining with colors he could not name. From a small opening in the craft, smoke rose into the night air. And then, to his amazement, someone stepped out. It was a young woman, but she looked different from anyone he had ever seen. Her eyes glowed softly, like two small stars, and her hair shimmered as though it carried the colors of the sky itself. She stumbled forward, weak and frightened, her breathing heavy, as if she had been running for her life. Daniel froze, unable to believe his eyes. He thought maybe he was dreaming, but the sound of her footsteps on the grass told him this was real. Before he could approach her, he saw movement in the distance. Several tall figures in dark armor appeared, stepping out from the shadows. They were not human. Their bodies were covered in metallic suits, and their faces were hidden behind masks that gave off an eerie light. They moved quickly, heading straight for the young woman. Daniel's first instinct was to hide, but then he saw the fear in her eyes. She looked around desperately, as if searching for someone to help her. Without thinking, Daniel ran forward. He placed himself between her and the armored figures. His heart was racing and his hands trembled, but he stood firm. "Stay back," he shouted. Though he knew they would not understand him, he had no weapon, no armor, nothing but his courage. The armored beings stopped for a moment, tilting their heads as if studying him. Then one of them stepped closer, raising an arm that carried a strange glowing device. Daniel felt a wave of fear, but he clenched his fists and refused to move. Behind him, the young woman whispered in a soft voice he did not understand. Still, he sensed her trust. She was relying on him, a stranger she had just met. That thought gave him strength. He remembered how, as a boy, his father once told him that real bravery was not about having power, but about standing up when no one else would. At that moment, Daniel chose to be brave. The armored figure raised the weapon higher, but before it could strike, Daniel grabbed a broken branch from the ground and swung it with all his might. The strike hit the figure's arm, making a sharp metallic sound. The blow did little damage, but it surprised them. The young woman took the chance to pull Daniel aside and whispered quickly in broken English, "Run." Together, they rushed toward the trees at the edge of the field. The armored beings followed, their steps heavy and loud. Daniel's lungs burned as he ran, but he did not stop. The girl stumbled once, and he grabbed her arm, pulling her along. They leapt over rocks, pushed through tall grass, and ran deeper into the night. Finally, they reached a narrow path where the pursuers could not easily follow. Daniel pulled the girl behind a large fallen tree, and they crouched down, gasping for breath. The armored beings searched nearby, but after a while, their footsteps faded into the distance. Silence filled the air again, broken only by Daniel's heavy breathing. He turned to the girl, still trying to make sense of everything. "Who are you?" he whispered. She looked at him with glowing eyes filled with both fear and relief. She did not answer immediately, but her hand touched his arm gently, as if thanking him for what he had done. In that touch, Daniel felt something powerful. A silent promise that their lives had just become connected in a way he could not yet understand. For the first time in his life, Daniel realized that adventure had come to him, not in a dream, not in a story, but in reality. He had defended a stranger who was not of this world, and though he was only an ordinary man, he had taken the first step into something far greater than anything he had ever imagined. That night, under the wide and endless sky, Daniel's quiet life changed forever. The night was quiet again, but Daniel's heart was still beating fast. He could not believe what had just happened. Only an hour ago, he was walking home from work, thinking of nothing special, and now he was sitting in the forest with a mysterious girl who had fallen from the sky. He kept looking at her glowing eyes, trying to understand if she was real or just part of his imagination. The girl looked back at him with caution. She seemed weak, tired, and frightened, but there was also a sense of strength in the way she carried herself. She tried to speak, her words broken and unfamiliar at first, but then slowly she formed sentences that Daniel could understand. "My name Leora," she said softly, placing her hand on her chest. Daniel nodded, repeating her name to make sure he had heard it right. "Leah," he said. The name felt strange but beautiful on his tongue. "I'm Daniel." Leora tilted her head as if memorizing it. Then, in her soft and careful words, she began to explain. She told him that she was not from Earth. She came from a faraway world, one he could not even imagine. Her people lived in great cities that floated among the stars. She was not just anyone. She was the princess of her world. Her family ruled with wisdom and peace, but there were enemies who wanted power. Those armored beings chasing her were loyal to a rival who sought to overthrow her mother, the queen. Daniel listened with wide eyes. Everything sounded unbelievable, yet he had seen the proof with his own eyes. The glowing craft, the armored hunters, and the girl herself. "You're a princess?" he asked in disbelief. Leora nodded slowly. "Yes, princess, but now hunted. They want me gone. If they catch me, my mother, my people in danger." Her voice trembled with fear, but also carried determination. Daniel tried to process it all. He had never thought much about life beyond Earth. He liked to look at the stars, but they were just distant lights to him. Now, one of those stars had sent a living person right into his path. He could not understand why, but he felt a strange sense of responsibility. "You saved me," Leora whispered, her glowing eyes fixed on him. Why? Daniel thought about it. He had acted without thinking, without planning. He remembered the moment he saw her standing helpless against those armored beings. Something inside him just refused to let her face danger alone. "Because you needed help," he answered honestly. "And I couldn't just stand there and watch." Her lips curved into the faintest smile. It was small, but it lit up her face in a way that made Daniel's chest feel warm. For a while, they sat in silence, catching their breath. The night around them was calm, but Daniel knew it was not safe. Those hunters would not stop until they found her. He needed to think of something. "Where will you go now?" he asked. Leora looked down, sadness clouding her eyes. "I cannot go back. Not yet. Too dangerous. They will find me." She touched a small device on her wrist, but it flickered weakly, almost broken. "My ship damaged. I am alone." Daniel looked at her wrist and then at the forest around them. He felt a rush of emotions, fear, confusion, and a strange sense of courage. He could walk away now, leave her to her fate, and return to his safe, simple life. But when he looked at Leora, he knew he could never do that. She had trusted him, even if only for a short time, and he could not betray that trust. "You're not alone anymore," Daniel said firmly. "I'll help you." Leora's eyes widened, surprise showing on her face. "You help me, but it is dangerous. Very dangerous for you." Daniel gave a small, nervous laugh. "I think it's already dangerous, but I'm not going to let you face this alone." For the first time, Leora's smile grew wider. It was filled with gratitude and relief. She reached out and touched his hand gently, as if sealing an unspoken promise between them. As the night grew colder, Daniel decided to take her somewhere safer. He knew his small apartment in town would not be secure if the hunters came looking, but it was better than staying out in the open. He guided her through back roads and quiet streets, avoiding the main paths. She moved gracefully, though sometimes she stumbled, still weak from her escape. Daniel supported her whenever she faltered, and each time she whispered a soft, "Thank you." When they finally reached his apartment, Daniel quickly closed the curtains and locked the door. Leora looked around curiously, touching the simple objects in his home: books, a lamp, and old radio. She seemed fascinated by everything, as if Earth's everyday items were strange treasures to her. Daniel offered her water and some bread, and though she ate slowly, she seemed grateful. Watching her, Daniel realized how fragile she seemed, despite being from a world more advanced than his own. She was a princess, but here in his small apartment, she was just a frightened girl far from home. As the night stretched on, Daniel asked her more questions. She told him about her world cities that floated in the skies, about gardens that glowed with colors not found on Earth, and about her mother, the queen, who ruled with kindness. Her eyes shone with pride when she spoke of her people, but when she talked about the enemies hunting her, her voice grew heavy with worry. Daniel listened closely, fascinated. He could not imagine such a life, yet the more she spoke, the more he felt connected to her. She was far from her home, cut off from her family, and in danger. He knew what loneliness felt like, and he did not want her to feel that way. Before they rested, Leora looked at him seriously. "Daniel, promise me you will not put yourself in danger for me again." Daniel smiled faintly. "I can't promise that, because if danger comes, I'll stand with you always." Her eyes softened, and though she said nothing, Daniel saw that she understood. That night, as the city slept quietly outside, Daniel sat awake for a long time, watching the stars from his window. He knew his life would never be the same again. He had stepped into a world he did not understand, but he had made a choice. He would protect Leora no matter the cost. Somewhere far beyond the sky, her enemies were still searching. But for now, in his small apartment on Earth, a fragile trust was growing between a human and an alien princess. And Daniel knew this was only the beginning of something much greater than himself. The next morning, Daniel woke up with a heavy feeling in his chest. He had slept on the couch, letting Leora rest in his small bedroom. The events of the night still felt unreal. A princess from another world was in his apartment, and enemies in dark armor were hunting her. He rubbed his eyes and sat up, trying to decide what to do next. From the bedroom, he heard a soft sound. Leora was awake. She stepped out quietly, her glowing eyes dimmer in the morning light. She looked calmer than before, but Daniel could still see the weight of worry in her face. "Good morning," Daniel said, trying to smile. She nodded and returned the smile gently. "Good morning, Daniel." Her voice was careful, each word chosen slowly, but she was learning. Daniel offered her some food, just simple bread, fruit, and water. She accepted gratefully, though she seemed curious about everything she touched. Even the glass of water made her stare for a moment, as though it was something precious. After breakfast, Daniel asked, "Do you think they will come back? The ones who chased you?" Leora's face grew serious. "Yes, they never stop. They follow until they win. They have trackers." She lifted her wrist, showing the broken device again. "They can find me. Maybe already close." Daniel felt a chill run through him. His apartment was no longer safe. He had to act quickly before they were discovered. "Then we can't stay here. Do you have somewhere else we can go?" Leora looked down. "I had a ship, but damaged. If I fix it, we can leave Earth. But I need time." Daniel thought hard. He remembered an old storage shed his uncle owned on the edge of town. Hardly anyone went there. It might give them a place to hide. "I know a place," he said finally. "Not perfect, but safer than here." Leora's eyes softened with relief. "Thank you." They packed what little Daniel had. Some food, a blanket, and tools from his repair shop. He thought maybe the tools could help fix her ship. Then, they slipped out quietly, avoiding crowded streets. Daniel felt nervous with every step, scanning the corners and shadows, half expecting those armored hunters to appear. By late afternoon, they reached the shed. It was small, filled with dust, and smelled of wood and rust. But it would do. Daniel pushed open the doors and guided Leora inside. "It's not much, but at least it's hidden," he said. Leora walked around, touching the walls and looking at the scattered tools. "It is safe enough," she whispered. For a few hours, Daniel helped her examine the device on her wrist. He did not understand much about alien technology, but he tried. Leora explained in simple words, showing him glowing symbols that reminded him of stars. She needed a special energy source to power it again, something far beyond Earth's machines. Daniel felt helpless, but Leora encouraged him with a kind smile. "You helped me already," she said softly. "Without you, I would not be here. You give me hope." Daniel felt warmth spread through him at her words. He was just an ordinary man, yet she spoke to him as if he mattered greatly. That gave him strength, but their peace did not last long. That night, while Daniel kept watch outside the shed, he heard a strange humming sound. His stomach tightened. He looked up and saw faint red lights moving between the trees. His worst fear was true. The hunters had found them. He rushed inside. "They're here," he whispered urgently. Leora's eyes widened, but she did not panic. She stood tall, her calmness surprising Daniel. "We must fight. Run, and they catch us. Together we stand." Daniel nodded, though fear clawed at him. He grabbed a metal rod from the shed, the only weapon he could find. Leora raised her hands, and for the first time, Daniel saw a soft glow spreading from her palms. She had powers he did not understand, but they were real. The armored hunters entered the clearing. Their steps were heavy, their glowing masks cutting through the darkness. One of them pointed a weapon toward the shed. Without hesitation, Daniel charged forward, swinging the rod with all his strength. It clashed against the enemy's armor, making sparks fly. The impact pushed him back, but he refused to give up. The hunter raised its weapon, and Daniel braced himself. Before the attack could land, a flash of light shot from behind him. Leora had unleashed her power. A wave of energy struck the enemy, knocking it to the ground. The others stepped back, surprised. "Daniel, move!" Leora called. He ducked, and another beam of light shot from her hands, hitting the second hunter. The air shook with power, and the smell of burnt metal filled the clearing. But there were more of them, and they were closing in fast. Daniel fought with everything he had, striking, blocking, and pushing. He knew he was no match for their strength, but every second he held them back gave Leora more time. His arms ached, his body bruised, but he refused to stop. Leora fought beside him, her powers glowing brighter with each strike. Her eyes burned like stars, and her voice rang clear and strong. Together, They drove the hunters back, step by step. Finally, after what felt like hours, the last of the hunters fell to the ground, disabled by Leora's energy. The forest fell silent once more. Daniel collapsed to his knees, gasping for breath. Sweat dripped down his face, and his hands shook from exhaustion. Leora knelt beside him, her face filled with gratitude. "You are brave," she whispered. "You fight with no fear." Daniel gave a tired laugh. "Trust me, I was afraid the whole time." But in her eyes, he saw something more than gratitude. He saw trust, deep and unshakable. After making sure the hunters were no longer a threat, Leora helped Daniel back into the shed. She gently touched his bruised arm, her expression soft and caring. "You risked everything again," she said quietly. "Why do you do this?" Daniel looked at her for a long moment. "Because I promised I wouldn't leave you alone, and I keep my promises." Leora's eyes shimmered with emotion. She placed her hand over his, and in that simple gesture, Daniel felt the bond between them grow stronger. The battle had shown him something important. He was not just protecting her anymore. He was fighting for something greater, a cause he did not fully understand, but knew in his heart was worth everything. That night, as he finally drifted into sleep, Daniel realized his life was no longer his own. He had stepped into a war that stretched beyond Earth, and there was no turning back. Together with Leora, he would face whatever came next. And deep inside, he knew this was only the beginning. The journey after the battle was long and filled with uncertainty. Daniel and Leora both knew Earth was no longer safe. The hunters would keep coming until they succeeded. Leora's ship, though damaged, was their only hope of escape. Daniel carried his tools and followed her into the forest where she had hidden it. When they reached the craft, Daniel was speechless. Even damaged, it looked extraordinary. Its smooth silver surface seemed to glow faintly, and its shape was unlike anything built by human hands. Leora placed her palm on the side, and the ship opened with a soft hiss. Inside it was filled with shining lights, strange panels, and seats that looked as though they had grown from the walls rather than being built. Daniel stared in awe. "This is incredible," he whispered. Leora smiled softly, though worry still clouded her eyes. "It will fly again. With your tools, maybe I can fix." For hours they worked together. Daniel handed her tools and followed her instructions, even though much of what she explained made little sense to him. Still, his steady hands and determination helped. Slowly, the ship began to hum with faint life again. At last, Leora touched a final panel, and the craft lit up fully. She turned to him with relief. "It is ready." Daniel hesitated. "If we fly this, where will we go?" Her glowing eyes softened. "Home to my world." "It is time." Daniel's heart raced. He had never left Earth, never even flown in an airplane, and now she was asking him to leave his entire world behind. Yet when he looked at her, he knew his answer. "I'm coming with you." Leora's lips curved into a small smile, as if she had hoped he would say that. "Then we go together." They stepped inside and the ship closed around them. The hum grew louder, and suddenly the ground vanished beneath them. Daniel gripped the seat tightly as the ship soared into the sky higher and higher until the earth shrank below. Stars filled the window, brighter than he had ever seen them. His heart swelled with both fear and wonder. After what felt like only moments, a vast world appeared before them. It was Leora's home, a planet bathed in shimmering light with floating cities, glowing rivers, and skies painted with colors Daniel had never known. It was breathtaking. The ship descended, guided by unseen forces, until it landed on a great platform high above the clouds. Waiting there was a group of tall figures dressed in elegant robes. At their center stood a woman of great presence. Her long robes shimmered like starlight, and her crown glowed softly upon her head. Her eyes were like Leora's, but sharper, filled with wisdom and command. Daniel instantly knew this was the queen, Leora's mother. Leora ran to her, her voice breaking with emotion. "Mother." The queen embraced her tightly, relief clear on her face. "My child, you are safe." Then her gaze shifted to Daniel, and he felt the full weight of her eyes upon him. It was like standing before a force of nature. "This is the one?" she asked. "Yes," Leora said, her voice firm. "He saved me again and again. Without him, I would not be here." The queen studied Daniel closely. He bowed awkwardly, unsure of what to do. I just did what anyone would have done. he said softly. But the queen shook her head. No. Few would face death for another, especially for one not of their kind. She stepped closer, her voice strong. You are brave, Daniel of Earth. You are more than I expected. Daniel felt heat rise to his face. He had never been praised by royalty before, let alone an alien queen. Over the next few days, Daniel was shown the wonders of Leora's world. He saw floating gardens that sparkled with living light, towers that touched the clouds, and markets filled with colors and sounds beyond imagination. Everywhere he went, people whispered about him, the human who had defended the princess. But what surprised him most was the queen. Instead of keeping him at a distance, she often spoke to him, her eyes thoughtful. She asked about his world, his life, his courage. And slowly, Daniel began to sense something he had not expected. The queen was not only grateful, she wanted more. One evening she called him to her private chamber. The room glowed with soft lights, and the air carried a sweet scent. She stood tall and regal, but her voice was calm. Daniel, she said, I have seen many warriors, many leaders, yet none have shown the heart you possess. You stood for my daughter without fear. That is rare, even among my people. Daniel swallowed nervously. I just couldn't let her be hurt. The queen's eyes softened. And that is why I want you here, not only as protector, but as someone who will stand beside me forever. Her words struck him like thunder. He had expected gratitude, perhaps honor, but not this. She, the queen of an entire world, was asking him to stay with her, not as a guest, but as something far greater. Daniel's heart pounded. He thought of Leora, the bond they had formed, the battles they had shared, but he also saw the queen's power, her wisdom, and her striking presence. Both mother and daughter wanted him close, but in different ways. He suddenly realized the weight of his choice. His life was no longer just his own. The future of this alien kingdom, and perhaps even Earth, rested on the path he would choose. And as the queen's words echoed in his mind, Daniel knew the moment of truth had come. Daniel could not sleep that night. He sat by the window of the guest chamber given to him, staring out at the glowing city below. His thoughts tangled together. Leora's trust, the queen's offer, his own longing for home, and the strange destiny that had pulled him so far from Earth. He remembered the first time he saw Leora, frightened and alone, chased by enemies. He remembered the way she had looked at him when he stood in front of her, ready to take the blows himself. That bond between them was real, born in fire and fear, yet filled with trust. But the queen's words weighed on him too. She was powerful, wise, and unlike anyone he had ever met. To stand by her side would mean honor, safety, and a future filled with greatness. He could live as part of something far beyond what Earth could offer. Yet deep inside, Daniel knew, power was not what his heart longed for. The next morning, he found Leora waiting for him in the gardens. She looked at him with quiet eyes, as if she already knew what was on his mind. My mother spoke to you, she said softly. Daniel nodded, unsure of what to say. She sees strength in you, but Leora paused, her voice trembling slightly. I see kindness. You did not fight because of power. You fought because you cared. That is who you are. Her words struck him deeply. For a moment, the weight on his shoulders felt lighter. Later that day, the queen called for him again. The hall was filled with the council, and all eyes turned to Daniel as he stepped forward. The queen rose from her throne, her voice carrying through the room. Daniel of Earth, she declared, you have proven your heart and courage. I ask you now, will you stand by me, share in my rule, and remain here forever? The hall fell silent. Daniel's chest tightened. He looked at the queen, majestic and powerful, then at Leora, whose eyes silently pleaded with him. He knew this choice would decide not only his fate, but the fate of two hearts. He took a deep breath and spoke. I came from a world where I was ordinary, but here I found something greater. Not power, not honor, but trust. I cannot turn away from the bond I share with Leora. My heart belongs with her. The hall erupted in whispers. The queen's expression remained calm, though a flicker of emotion passed through her eyes. She studied him for a long moment, then slowly nodded. You have chosen with honesty, she said, her voice steady. And for that, I respect you. Relief washed over Daniel. He turned toward Leora, who smiled through tears. She stepped forward and took his hand. and together they stood before the queen. Though the queen's desire had been strong, she placed her hand over theirs. Then so be it. Daniel, protector of the princess. Your path is beside her, but remember this, you are now part of our world forever. And so it was decided Daniel would remain, not as a ruler beside the queen, but as the protector and companion of the princess he had once saved on Earth. As he looked into Leora's glowing eyes, Daniel felt peace. He had made his choice not for power, but for love and trust. His life had changed forever the night he stood against the armored hunters. And now his future lay not in the ordinary life he once knew, but in a world among the stars, where he would stand beside the alien princess he had defended forever.